Good afternoon, and welcome to Solar Energy 2 webinar provided by the University of Illinois Extension. My name is Kathy Brown, and I'm a Community and Economic Development Educator for the University of Illinois Extension. You should note that for sound quality, we will be muting all of the microphones during the presentation, and we want you to use the chat space to send questions to the speaker. If you have any problems connecting, add those questions to that chat space as well, and we'll be moderating that and be able to troubleshoot with you. Today's webinar is about local government approaches to implementing solar development, and this recorded webinar will be made available on our local government education website and YouTube channel. We have as our speaker today, Rick Swan, and he is the East Peoria Chamber of Commerce Director and Fond du Lac Township Supervisor. With him are members of the local team who worked on the implementation of the solar farm, and that includes Paul Whittington, the project manager, John Redling Schaefer, who is an attorney with Mercer Law Offices, and Kendra Cunningham, who is the office manager at Fond du Lac Township. The value of this project to the community and our region is really exceptional. It means green energy, jobs, lower energy bills, and will be used as an educational tool in their schools, teaching about solar energy. Although Fond du Lac Township was the first, there are many plans for more solar panel projects in Central Illinois, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to learn from the experiences. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our speaker, Rick Swan.
All right. We welcome everyone today. Again, Paul couldn't join us today, so John and Kendra are here. Just a quick background. In December of 2016, the Illinois legislature, easy for me to say today, passed the Future Energy Jobs Act. During the summer of 2017, I ran into a friend, Colleen Callahan, who was working with Trajectory Energy on solar projects. The conversation led to us getting together and putting this project together. October of 17, the local media was informed of the possibility of the solar project here in Fond du Lac Township. In November of 17, actually November 9th, we held a public information meeting to inform the township residents about the solar project and also answer any questions. By township law, the guidelines that we have, November 16th, a week later, we held a special town meeting, which 52 individuals from the community attended. 46 were registered voters in Fond du Lac Township. Again, the project was brief that night, this explained briefly, and a vote was taken, 46 unanimously in favor of doing the solar project. January 8th of 2018, the City of East Peoria Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, the ordinance amending the code was passed as previously the code of the zoning board authorized our project. And then in January 8th of 2018, a second ordinance was adopted to allow us to put a second project in the works. So that brings us in May of 18, Project 2 was proposed. I got ahead of myself. And then September of this year, the addition was made. So that brings us now up to hopefully January 15th, the Illinois Power Agency will begin accepting applications for solar, community solar, with the selection of projects expected in February and March of 2019. So that brings us to the point right now, we're somewhat in limbo, waiting for the Illinois Power Agency to authorize the permits. Whether we are fortunate enough to get one permit, two permits, however that's going to go, we're not sure yet. So, but at this point in time, we are shovel ready. So at this point, what I'd like to do is start from the beginning process of how this started. Again, we've been working with Trajectory Energy Partners for this project. So, Kendra, if you could go ahead and go ahead. Okay. Okay, as we say, this bring about Trajectory. They're a great partner. They bring the communities, governments, organizations, and landowners to develop clean energy projects with strong local support. This was very helpful to us because we're very focused on jobs in this area, which they work or continue to work very, very strongly with all of the local labor, the local suppliers of product and things. So we will have many jobs opened up and keep the local workforce working. That would be electricians, laborers, carpenters, all the skilled trades, along with several of our local supply houses that supply products to those folks. So very, very important to keep that community activity going there. So. Okay. Again, a little bit about Trajectory. They've had transactions with many, many companies, including Campbell's, Google, Denver, the Mile High City. Several there are listed and that we can see. Okay. And again, back to December of 2016, the Illinois Future Energy Jobs Act was passed through the House and the Senate. Which created new opportunities for communities like Fond du Lac Township to bring solar power to the communities. Again, Trajectory Energy Partners works with communities like Fond du Lac Township to evaluate their options, develop projects with strong local support. The deck presents an overview of the community solar site in Fond du Lac Township, which is property we've owned for probably the better part of 20 years. Remember? So it is owned by the township. What we looked at there, that's approximately 62 acres of property, which is basically is about as flat as a table. Prior to that, we leased the property to a farmer who was using that every year to, one year it'd be corn, next year it'd be beans, so he would rotate the crops. The intention in buying that years ago was to build a second cemetery. We have, at the present time, a cemetery that's 120 plus years old. Almost 200 years old now. Geez, that slipped by me. So anyway, we're probably about 85, 90% capacity here. So looking in the future, we bought this again 20 some years ago that on the idea of building a second cemetery. Just the need hasn't really occurred yet for us to do that. So the land has stayed vacant. And again, the farmer's been using it. Well, since Colleen and I ran into each other actually in a meeting, started talking about this, and we got together with the city about what opportunities there were in the community. I started looking at it and I said, wait a minute, we got some flat ground that would be usable because we actually only need maybe 10, 15 acres of that property for the cemetery that we're looking to do. We're also going to put in a cremation wall, which right now, Kendra helped me on this, it's probably 50-50 on traditional versus cremations. Cremations do not take up the space that a normal cemetery would use. So in saying that, we had land available. So we started working with Trajectory, and then John entered into the picture to start putting some contractual things together. Again, under township law, we did have to present this in a town meeting, but we went backwards one step and had a public meeting so that all of the citizens knew what was going, what would be happening. We didn't want any surprises, didn't want anyone not knowing what was happening there. So we put everything on the table for them to attend, which many, many did. And we also had several of the labor bodies there, the carpenters, again, the electricians, the laborers, all of those groups there were very, very strongly supportive, as was the city. So we had a great working relationship through this whole process. So that's how the whole thing started. Again, the key to the thing is just get it in front of the folks, let them see what it is, explain the benefits, and if there's downsides, talk those through, and then work forward. We didn't see, and John Kinder helped me on this, we didn't incur any downsides to it that I remember at all.
You definitely did a very good job explaining the project, getting all of the details out. We had a few people ask some very specific questions, and they
which was good.
Were able to provide those answers, and we did a fantastic job informing.
And one thing I would add is, in addition to having the public meeting or the hearing or whatever you want to call it, whether it's required or not, is also having a partner, whether it be the municipal side or the private side, offering future contact opportunities. Having someone say to the public, if you have any further questions, here's how I can be reached. That's not only going to help answer that individual's question, but it's also going to allow the team, and I say the team consisting of both the municipality, the private partner, and the public at large, to better anticipate and be prepared to educationally respond for the current and maybe even future projects.
So, and again, we were fortunate. The plot that Trajectory wanted was 18 acres, which fit very nicely. And as I'd mentioned previously, we've actually looked at a second parcel within that same quadrant to put a second field in. So, that would give us two opportunities to provide power to our community. Now, in saying that, one grid, the 18 acres, is about 2K, which will provide power to approximately 400 houses and or businesses. Now, it won't provide to, say, a Caterpillar or a Keystone Steel and Wire. That's not the intent. It's for homeowners, it's for municipalities, it's for public bodies, schools. So that helps reduce the power cost or the electrical cost to those organizations or private individuals. I will add that at the meeting, both meetings that we had, our green team, as we call it here in East Peoria, they were there in force because they were so supportive of this. They actually put their names down to register to be on the grid as soon as the power is available, so they can take advantage of this power. And several of those people already have solar panels in their homes now and will sign up again, or they signed up to be on the grid when this becomes available. So that's another thing that your green, if you have conservationists or green teams, whatever, in your area, they should really, really fall in love with this. So, okay. Again, I talked a little bit about the jobs. They're partnering again with the local contractors, installers, engineers, all of those things that will create jobs for there. And again, Trajectory being the source will give priority to local electrical users for the energy savings from that, which, John, do you remember or Kendra, the percentage it was?
Yes. So on average, and this is from information based off of information from Trajectory, an average subscriber can expect to save roughly 10% off the energy supply portion of the utility bill.
Right. So there again, that was attractive to a lot of the citizens that were there. The revenue, the lease, the 18 acres, that's revenue for the township that we didn't have because, again, we got a little money from the farmer doing that, but nothing compared to what we were able to work with Trajectory on. Also, Trajectory's promised, and they're very good at their word. Everything they've ever said they do, they've done, and we don't see that changing. But educational opportunities. They want to work with the local schools on a solar curriculum for students. So that's a huge benefit to our community. Okay. Community solar opens up access to communities, government entities, organizations, and landowners that can install solar on their roof or property. One of the schools here locally, they're currently looking at putting solar. In fact, it's the school right next to our project. So they've been working on that very, very strong. So again, it's all about working together and sharing the information and growing the solar power, because that is the wave of the future. Okay. How the solar community, how it works, subscribers. Like Township, the government entities, again, organization, landowners decide to participate, they subscribe to the community project. And we're working with Trajectory on that right now to get that working. We again took a list of folks at the town meeting and had that. So our township community solar project produces energy which will flow into the local grid. There again, that's working with Ameren, who's the large energy provider in this area. So again, Trajectory has worked with them. Paul, our project manager, has met with them several times. They're very, very upbeat to do this because, especially on ours, because everything runs right there. We've got main power boxes and lines that are going through there that they can coordinate with. So we're good with that. Again, once we got through the township, everything there, the town meetings and that, and we had worked with the city, and it's just a parcel of land that we've owned, again, for several years. 18 acres is what we're going to be leasing to them, and possibly an extra parcel as time goes on. Okay. John, do you want to touch on this a little bit? Because John and Trajectory's attorney basically set up the contract. They had a boilerplate that we worked into, John, and those folks worked all through this. So I'll allow him to explain what we're looking at.
Sure, happy to do so. I will say this, saying in the end who makes the decision and how this all comes to fruition is not just a one-step answer. One of the main reasons that I am grateful to have been part of this is so much of the foundation had been accomplished by the Township and Trajectory before, okay, now it's time to get the lawyers involved to get the fine details. I will say this, and I assume other solar companies do the same, but I was very fortunate that when working with Trajectory, Rick is right, you start with a basic. It's one of those where we have to figure out how long are we going to have this project. Trajectory is going to need time to do diligence and inspection to see how long a project is going to be viable. Do they want to include an option during the initial diligence build out, and then finally a term of how long you would like. If for some reason I'm seeing that you can't hear me and I'm talking just pretty quite loudly, so I apologize. Is that better? All right, I'm seeing that better. All right. So what I'm trying to explain here is if the basic details can be ironed out between the parties, it's up to the lawyers to put all those together. So as you see on the screen, we have to figure out how long do we need an entity to build out, how long do they need an additional period of time to keep the property. I mean, if you're going to lease it to someone, you don't have a choice but to figure out how long that's going to last. Well, then what are the other terms we're going to look at in a contract? We also need to figure out what the price is going to be. And, it's a matter of public record. We don't have any
qualms about sharing what the deal is here. One thing for public bodies to remember is that any documentation we negotiate and put together with a private party is going to be subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So you're going to have to be upfront and honest with everybody, because it's only a matter of time before someone requests you to see that information anyway. There is, provisions in some leases where we can talk about escalators over the course of a very long-term lease. You may not have a choice but to think, you know what, we're giving this site's not being used for farm or for cemetery or other purposes for a long period of time. What does the other side have in terms of options of increasing the amount of rent they're going to be paying? And so as you see here on kind of the last number, you've got an amount of revenue that's projected in lease. Now, you may have residents who see that as well, this is great. What are we going to see? Understand, this is a projection over 30 years. This is not going to be something that's in your coffers right away, but you balance that with the opportunities for also the project, not just the finances, and it's clear to everyone as to why that's a key component. So, the agreement itself, you're going to have to sit down with counsel. I'm biased because that's what I do for a living, but any member of the team is going to have to involve someone to address your legal considerations, because the lawyers on this other side for the solar company, they can't represent you. Ethically, they shouldn't, because it's two sides to a contract. And so, working with them to come up with the basic terms and foundation will be great. Once you have a contract in place, you're obviously going to need any filings that may have to go to the recorder's office, whether that be an easement, a lease, a memorandum. There are countless things that may need to be filed in the various county recorder's office and elsewhere. So, you see the terms of the agreement, but that's but one piece of the quote unquote legal puzzle, in addition to whatever ordinances or resolutions your unit of government may need to prepare to approve of the agreement and the terms.
So, continuing on, it's on the screen now, as John mentioned, are the situations that we went through. We actually, and I'll share this, we originally went in at $800 per acre with the 2% escalator, which we were fine with. We thought, okay, that's good. That's what was going on in the marketplace. We knew that. To the credit trajectory and the folks there, they called and said, hey, we would like to change the contract. Right away, go, wow, what's this? So they said, we would like to give you $1,000 per acre, because that's what we now see the market value. So they did that upon their own. Legally, they did not have to do that. And again, they did that because of the working relationship that we have with them, and they do what they say they're going to do. So again, that's just a sidebar that we were very fortunate to work with these folks that do what they say they're going to do. So again, you can look at the projected revenue. What that's going to do for us, as I said earlier, is to help us build the cemetery, which we were looking at how we would do that. We would borrow money or how we would do the funding of that. This helps take care of that. Secondly, what this will do is help us do some projects that are needed and keep our tax rate at a level that we currently are at, I believe, unless something goes haywire in the whole system. But that will give us some additional revenue to do some things. And again, keep our tax rates stable, hopefully in the future. So again, it's a win-win situation for us in that regard. Again, the layout, it's 7,000 solar panels, as you can see. The interesting part of this, and I didn't have a clue what was going on prior to this, these panels actually shift. They rotate to the sun. So it's a constant motion, no noise, nothing to it. But they're very, very you know, stable in the construction, and weatherproof is what we see. So again, the single axis track, you know, again, it shows here how they're placed on a controller, and it actually follows the sun, which was very interesting. And again, this goes into the educational part, that they can go to the schools and talk about how these are built, how these attract the energy, how these hold the power. We okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard that beep. So, okay. By rotation, they receive more power and can store more than the tradition or the old type, I guess, that would be stationary. So we can, so that's what will be used in ours. And here's a picture of what those look like. You might notice that there's a chain link fence around the property in the background there, which this will also have the chain link. We've talked about that. The foliage, the grass, all of the plants and things that are in there, trajectory is going to do that. So, you know, this will actually, for us, will help because of water runoff, erosion, those sort of things in that property, because, you know, during the time that the land's not farmed, it's bare ground with basically ruts, or what's the term the farmer uses, John? John farms. He understands.
Rut is just fine. Loud and clear, yeah.
So as you can see, and it's going to be an attraction by the foliage and the plants and things, you know, that will provide for birds and bees and all those sort of things, and wildlife. So it's not a hindrance. It's not going to be an eyesore. It certainly will enhance, you know, what we have there, and enhance the community.
Excuse me.
Educational program, again, I touched upon that. We're looking very in the near future here to work with the trajectory to get with the schools. We've already been in contact with the schools, and they're very excited about presenting ideas of solar to students, because again, solar will be the way of the future as we go forward. We're very knowledgeable of that, or feel that that's the way it's going to be. Okay. The solar community engagement. Okay. Again, it's education on solar, the policies, the market drivers, reduction, you know, those things. You know, we've talked to trajectory. They've been just fabulous on allowing us to become educated on what's going on out there. John, again, has worked extensively with their legal team to keep us apprised of everything going on, not only in the contractual part of it, but the legislative part at the state level. And this is also going to feed into federal at some point in time. You know, I'm sure there's going to be some federal monies coming down the road to make things happen. So, you know, it's just a ongoing process of educating ourselves with what the industry is.
And if I may just interject on a couple things, you know, the beauty of community engagement, we mentioned education. You know, we're sitting in an area where we have grade schools, we have high schools, and we have community colleges, and we have four-year universities, all within a stone's throw of where we are. So, you know, to Trajectory's credit, the idea of engaging education is not just oh, we've got a neighboring school, we're going to throw some you know, documents at them and have them. No, this is an interactive opportunity at various levels, including some of those community college technical classrooms, and the four-year university policy courses and things like that. You know, even the poli-sci folks could somehow get interested in this because they're having to watch federal and state legislation as well. So, you know, from the beginning, you know, Rick was saying this is of the future, and there's no doubt about it. It's not just, you know, but it's not as simple as just hey, here's a first grade thematic unit. No, this is something that kindergartners through graduate and postgraduate work can also be involved in with us.
And, you know, as best I know, the sun's not going away. So again, so it's building for the future. It doesn't take up, it's not like the windmills, the configuration, the makeup in my humble opinion, is much better because of it fits into the properties. It's somewhat low to the ground, so it's not something you see out there. I'm not against wind power, not saying that, but with our situation here, this is going to work very nicely into the landscape part of it. So, again, the key steps in the process, it's, the site option lease agreement between the landowner and the trajectory or whatever solar partner that is looking at that. Zoning and permitting applications. I would, if you're looking at, looking to go into this, and John also serves on the county board, so he's involved in several things. What I would do is, if you're contacted or you think you might want to do this, I would probably take the aggressive approach and go to the zoning and permitting office and talk to them prior to getting into, the site selection and all those things. So it's the old saying, get your ducks in a row, because that way, if there are issues, work the issues through prior to getting with a partner in this. So that way everything's done, you know what you need to do. And if you run into some obstacles, you can talk about it. So the full interconnection, analysis, and design with utility. Again, it was a very, very smooth transition, between Ameren, us, city, trajectory. It just all went very well together. They've been a great partner in this. They see the benefit of it also. The engineering design of the landscape integrity of the community. Again, we used some local engineering people that work well with our partners to make things, what we thought was going to happen, make it happen. So they were able to go out and look at the land, what might need to be done as far as elevations, that sort of thing. So, all of that was done. And again, that would be something I would also do prior to going to the city, with your application, because that way you can show the plans, what the project's going to look like, and work out all the details prior to sending it to a board or a council or the elected officials to have them vote on it, so they can see it right in front of them and have all the answers, all the questions answered prior to. And then the application for the credits, we're working on that right now. That's a process. That's the January 15th, as Kendra just mentioned, that we're waiting on some things from the state. And of course, they're back in session here coming up. So hopefully that will be worked out, and we'll know further how to start registering people, and also how the process of selecting a site will be handled. And then again, management of financing and construction costs of the project. Again, that's working with trajectory, working with John. As John mentioned, he was very humble in this. John has dealt with townships, I think, most of his career, and so in government bodies, so he understands the process. And he's been our township attorney for many years now, and handled many, many issues that come up. Anytime you're in government or the public sector, you're going to have issues at some point in time. So again, I would suggest getting an attorney that is knowledgeable of this type of work and hiring them. It will pay benefits down the road tremendously to have these things all legally taken care of prior to going into it. So again, his work with the legal folks at Trajectory were great. They put together what I would term a boilerplate contract that that a reputable attorney put this together with them, so that there's nothing that can fall through the cracks in it. So it's a very solid. So again, I would stress that very strongly to get. Also on the financial part of that, I would also look at, again, it's a payment each year, but don't overextend your spending. Just make sure if you've got landscape work to do, if you've got anything that needs to be done with the project, calculate that into your initial cost and go that direction, and don't promise things that you can't do. Again, the customer acquisition of the solar, community solar subscribers, that one we're just kind of hanging loose on, right, Kendra, to see what we can do.
Right.
So again, a lot of, we're ready, as I said, we're ready to build it tomorrow. It's just a matter of now getting the state to figure out permitting and those sort of things. We've already went through all the legal processes, the zoning, the applications, all of that's been approved. So it's just a matter right now of, again, waiting for applications from the state. So guys, my eyes aren't good enough. Are there questions out there that we can, maybe that's, that we can,
there was a question. I had a
So,
question.
you want to scroll up here and we'll be able to read all of these, other than, can you get the lawyer closer to the microphone? I did see that question quite a lot here.
Unfortunately, I didn't.
All right, so the first question here, I'll just read them out loud to everybody.
Sure.
Who is the decision maker that needed to approve of the project? Was it Rick?
Again, any type of, let me answer this in a township form, township supervisor. Any use of township property is acted upon by the voters. We as the township, I presented this to our trustees, which we unanimously voted to proceed with the process. Again, with John's expertise and it, Kendra's help, all of this and Paul's putting it all together. So in saying that, we, the township, are legally bound to the voters of Fond du Lac Township. Any type of use of property has to be approved by them at a special town meeting. So that's the process that we had to go through. And again, we took it upon ourselves to do a public meeting prior to the town meeting so that the people were educated. We put out all the information on the TV, the news, websites, all those things to get any issues on the table, get those answered. And if there's something that we didn't know and we didn't think about, then we could research and get that answer prior to the town meeting, which we, the voters, again, unanimously approved to do this. They were totally in favor. John, on your perspective, is that, now that's township. So cities, I'll let city or county properties, I'll let John handle that.
Yeah, and again, you all know, hopefully, if you're coming from the county or the city perspective or the Forest Preserve District, you should become intimately, or already are, intimately familiar with your powers. As Rick said, there are limitations at various points. Now, cities, especially home rule cities, have a lot more independence, and there's only one home rule county, and that's Cook. So, I mean, for the most part, you're going to have, and I'll say it, generally more authority than probably a township in the city and county realm. That being said, we cannot stress enough how important we felt the public, the prior commitment to the public for informational purposes. Having a plan for the press releases, having a plan with the energy partner to what is going to be said. And, transparency was always that buzzword. It still is the buzzword, quite honestly. We have found that we were very fortunate to be in a position where we could address just about every conceivable question before it was time to put that to a vote. There are instances where a project can end up in front of a zoning board of appeals at the county or the city level. No one really doesn't know much about it, and surprise, surprise, the project maybe gets voted down, or there is an opposition that organizes quickly, and you're at a loss because we know the project's good, but we just need to get that out there. So again, the more you can do up front, no matter
what your authority or your law tells you you have to do, I think has value. The next question we see here is, can we restate the financial benefits of the operation?
Okay. We'll get back to the slide here. Okay. John, ours was 20
now.
20 year,
Yeah.
20-year lease, which, in just rough terms, it's a 20-year lease that we're paid $1,000 per acre, and with a 2% escalator each year for the term of the lease, so for the 20 years. So in calculation of that, that's $18,000 the initial year, and then with the 2% escalator on top of that each year. So as you can see, the numbers out here, it's that's over a 30-year period, $750,000 roughly. So again, after year one, you know, when you first start the project, then that helps you in the budget process, knowing that, okay, I'm going to get $18,000 plus the 2% escalator coming in that year for additional projects and to balance tax levels.
Well, that's a great point, because, you know, no matter the type of government you are, you have budgetary obligations in terms of reporting, and, you know, between your budget planning and your upcoming levies, you know, certainly there's going to have to be a tough balance, and having some financial security and knowing exactly what's coming in on this particular aspect versus, you know, the unknown and many other issues is clearly a strong benefit.
Well, and one thing, John, to add on to that, anything inside the fence, as we call it, maintenance, all of that is on trajectory, or the body that's handling the solar panels. So we take care of the rest of the property, which we would do anyway, and they handle everything within the fenced area. So that's what I would term, you know, critical in that application too. The one thing, and I don't know the answer to this, maybe John could, if you're a private landowner, if you're leasing that, you might want to get with your tax accountant and figure out how that works in.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, whether you're private or a public property owner, I still think consultation with your auditor or your accountant makes sense. Number one, from the public side, I mentioned, you know, the budgetary obligations. What do I have to show as income? What do I have to show as out? You know, expenses like legal, or maybe, you know, things like that. From the private standpoint, yeah, certainly whatever lease income you have may be taxable, but you know, a consultation with the accountant up front may also expose you to potential, you know, from the both federal and state levels, who knows what sort of green or favorable sentiment could come in any new tax bill related to renewable energy. So any consultation makes sense. The next question I see here is, do you have to make changes to your zoning or permitting in order for this to work? Well, the legal answer to just about every question is it depends. But let's just err on the side of yes. This all relates back to your initial diligence. We know that in most, not every county, I can say that because I learned the hard way, but in just about every county in Illinois, we're going to have some sort of zoning classification, whether it be, you know, residential, commercial, agricultural, industrial. I'm generalizing. We know there are obviously more types of zoning that can exist. However, that diligence that Fond du Lac did by reaching out to the city of East Peoria that actually has zoning control, the township does not here. And we're in an area where the city actually has control versus the unincorporated part of the county. In that instance, we had to work with them because we were so early in the process. Many cities and counties did not even have solar farm ordinances. They didn't have zoning for it. They didn't, you know, and it's nobody's fault. It was just so early in the process that those were just now being considered. So we had to be on the forefront with East Peoria and with Tazewell County to have provisions put into the zoning codes on how to implement and license and otherwise zone these solar farms. Now, in terms of permitting, what we're finding out is that for the most part, you know, your building and your construction permitting is going to be in essence the same. Understand that another key component sometimes that comes into this is the local health officials, because they may or may not require some sort of you know, depending on what the temporary construction is going to look like, if you're going to have an office or you're going to have some sort of structure that sits permanently there for future management, we're not. But they may require certain, you know, septic or wastewater options there too. So, you know, in terms of the question, yeah, we had to make sure the zoning allowed for it, how it was going to be put in place. Maybe you live in an area where you have kind of a solar guidance, or it may be a special use versus just allowed in the particular area.
And to that, there's a question here with you received 3 ordinances specific to the solar project. And the first one was to allow solar energy systems as a special use in the residential, commercial, and industrial districts. This area had to add that to the city code. And so for that, since the township owns property in the city of East Peoria, we had to obtain a special use ordinance for the township property. And then we had to get an ordinance to amend the city code to add a solar energy code. So first they had to make the solar energy code. Then they had to allow solar energy to be a special use. And then they issued us a special use permit for the township property. Now, once it was determined that our state could have a second phase of the project, which would add 6 to 10 acres in a project 2, we did receive an amended special use ordinance to allow that additional acreage just this month actually.
Okay, so next, do you know if there's an opportunity to double solar farms with something like a conservation easement, such as an easement to protect pollinator habitats? Well, I suppose that's quite possible, depending on who your energy partner is and what the zoning authority wants you to do. If I understand the question correctly, you know, you're going to have a lot of green space. It just kind of depends on what the overall plan for construction and use is. If you've got buffer zones, yeah, I could, you know, again, my knowledge is not, you know, huge on this, but I could think that just like any other zoning project, the zoning authority may ask, well, what sort of landscaping buffers, what sort of greenscape are you going to require, or will they require on a project? And if part of that includes, again, assuming the company you're working with wants to do that, allows room for pollination and other, you know, habitat options, you know, that's something you could easily work out with them. But that would require, I think, some additional diligence, because I don't think we have anything similar like that on it. The next question, do you know how many of these projects are going to be approved? Boy, I wish we had that crystal ball, huh?
We don't know.
Yeah.
A lot are in the works right now, and I think that's one of the solar companies are struggling with, because that's an yeah, it very well could conceivably go into a lottery situation where each body that, or each project that's been approved and ready to go will go into a lottery, and then the power agency will draw names. We're hoping that with the thrust of solar power and the benefits of solar power for communities, and the benefit, and again, the benefits that are out there, that the legislation bodies push to have as many applicants able to do it as they're out there, versus a select number each year. So that under the formula right now, as it stands today, there will be X number allotted, and we're not sure what that number is. Unless John or Kendra, I don't remember what the number is. But anyway, that's we're hopeful that the lottery goes away, and that they just say, hey, start building next spring.
Yeah, we're in, for those of you that maybe had a little trouble hearing, you know, we're kind of at the mercy of what the state, the Illinois Power Agency, is telling us. Regulations and comment periods change in terms of how they want to handle the procedures. But as best as we can tell, yeah, there is going to be in January the idea to accept these applications with a selection process. How that process is handled in February or March, we're at the mercy. But being ready, as Rick said, shovel ready, is very important. We're ready to go when we need to be. The next question, you mentioned how to get community support and engagement during the planning process. Aside from how to do this, how important do you think it is for local governments to consider during the implementation and the planning? Well, yes, it would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need community support.
Yeah, Rick was right on when he said, reach out to your trades, reach out to your city zoning or county zoning, reach out to the press, reach out to your green teams, your environmental groups, reach out to your council members or those that have the final vote on this authority. This is an opportunity to get all the players advised, aware, and have all those questions answered even before the pen. I mean, it was funny. We had all this worked out to a degree, but then it was not until we had elector approval that we had the documents there for Rick and his counterpart at Trajectory to sign. So no ink was on any paper, but yet we had all that ironed out and ready to go. Was there a chance that people could have voted no? Absolutely. But the odds were not pointing that way because everything had tried to be conveyed to the public as early as we could. Any other, let's see, one other couple of questions here. Financial benefits, what are the financial benefits to homeowners and businesses in implementing this project? Oh, Kendra raised this issue earlier. On average, a subscriber can expect to save roughly 10% off of the energy supply portion of their utility bill. And so that would also apply to homeowners and businesses. And again, we feel that, you know, this is a huge benefit to schools as well that are going to be close by. And then I don't think I see, oh, there was a question about the zoning ordinance. I can tell you that the city of East Peoria has their ordinances available online. I think they also contract with Municipal or one of the other agencies. You know, so the township itself doesn't have a solar code, but the ordinances related to the solar energy code and solar energy systems as a special use in their overall zoning code would be available online too, if anybody who wanted it.
Yeah, actually, if need be, if you want to actually talk to a person, Ty Livingston is the Director of Planning and Zoning for the city, and we work with Ty extensively on this project. So again, Ty Livingston, City of East Peoria, 309-427-7623.
Off the top of his head.
That's right off the top of my head. So, but no, I would be happy to talk to you guys. Again, this is a benefit to all communities, and we see that that's, you know, and anything we can be helpful in this ongoing process. Fond du Lac Township, 309-699-5621. Correct? Kendra shaking her head and just, you know, looking at us. But no, anything we can do to help, please let us know. Because again, it's very valuable for our community and your citizens and your, you know, and for the future we see. Anything else on there, John?
I don't see any other questions, so I think, yeah, we've addressed them all.
We ran right up to
Getting close to 1 o'clock. We did our best.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I don't see anything else out there.
Thank you very much. An excellent overview of your project and some really great tips on implementation,
Okay.
engaging the community. I think we did a good job of capturing the questions. We're going to set up a poll that really helps us to kind of gauge where we're at in the programming for today. So do click on the poll and give us your responses there to how the program helped you. And I want to say thank you for participating. Special thanks to our presenters for taking time to share your experience. That's very important. And to let you know that there will be a recording of today's webinar. It'll be available on the University of Illinois Extension's website in probably 2 to 3 business days. And we hope that you'll be able to join us for our next webinar on October the 4th, We'll be looking at public places for the 21st century using green spaces to reach the triple bottom line. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.